Hi, welcome back for my spoiler review of Superman from James Gunn. And well, after further thought about it, I think I liked the movie a little less than I initially did upon leaving the theater. One of the things that stuck out about this movie was the fact that I didn't feel as moved or as quite as impressed with it as I did with Superman when that came out. I don't know if I've become more jaded since then, if I would feel the same way I'd had something like Man of Steel had come out now, but yeah, I don't know. It's just there's a lot of stuff that, upon further reflection, really stuck out to me in terms of the plot. That I think that this movie had too much going on in it. I personally think with side characters, superpowered characters, where it kind of takes the focus away from Superman's plight of being him and being Superman and being the symbol of hope when others exist. It's kind of, the field is already crowded, and so his presence as a true superpowered metahuman in the world is sort of diminished because he's not the only one, right? I don't know what the roadmap is for DC films that James Gunn is taking it, but it's just like the lack of focus on Superman. And not just like for the action stuff. I'm talking about just him as a character, his personal plight, his the way his character evolves throughout the movie. There's a little less focus in that. I think the few moments that did come through were pretty well done, but I think he could have done with more of that. I took a bunch of notes last night for plot points that I thought that stuck out pretty good. Eve stuck out to me as that although she was pretty humorous and pretty like cliche, blonde bimbo type, social media, Instagram type, who's just always taking selfies, but secretly he's actually clever enough to sneak some stuff in the background of the photos that she was sending to Jimmy, which I did kind of appreciate him being kind of ladies' man, almost like a Will Ferrell's character in kind of like a savant, with the ladies, like Will Ferrell's character and the other guys, except not to the hilarious degree in that movie. But they could have easily made him into like a typical like dork type character, nerd type character. But he was actually he had enough agency on his own as a character to where I appreciate that they actually did that to him and didn't kill him off like in freaking Batman versus Superman. That was so dumb. That was one of the things I didn't like about that movie. But the plot with Eve, I think, thinking about the movie a little further, it didn't quite make sense that Lex would be careless enough to allow her to be around him while his evil plans are in play, right? Taking selfies during a battle with Superman while he's in his control room pulling the strings on everything, or letting her see some sensitive shit, even though he's imprisoned in X for smaller shit. You think he'd have keep tight security around his own stuff and not let her take and post publicly. He would have total ownership for how much of a control freak he is. So his lapse in judgment in that regard with her character just came off as inconsistent. His ability to develop technologies that's physics breaking, like creating a pocket universe and harnessing all sorts of cosmic energies and whatnot. I mean, you think that he'd be way above orchestrating an invasion of some third world country out somewhere and taking the land for himself. That seems too small for someone with his capabilities. He should be being like a giant tech mogul, being like a tech oligarch if they really want to be that kind of topical. He seemed, I don't know if that's like the direction they wanted to take Lex. Him being wrapped up with envy that he wants to just outright out-muscle Superman. But I feel like the character should be sharp enough to be above that and to be a little bit more clever and shrewd. Though I did like how much of a piece of shit he was in the movie. They didn't shy away from that. I mean, the fact that he threatens to kill a dog, his family. He played that Russian roulette game around that random stranger that he traced down who just helped him out. Like that's some pretty villainous shit. So I do give props to their willingness to go that far with Lex and Nicholas Holt's character, his portrayal of that character. That was pretty good. I did like that. Like I said during my spoiler free review, this movie's a pretty mixed bag. See here, there's too many side characters, as I mentioned before, so the tone shifts is too drastic with the Justice Gang, I think. There's inconsistency with wanting to spare that giant monster in the middle of Metropolis, yet having no problem with dispatching the Vulture guards inside the Pocket universe in that river. That I'm pretty sure those guys are dead, and I'm pretty sure that attack at the end of the movie where he heat visions and it drops them all out of the sky, those guys are all pretty dead. So like the movie's kind of glosses over that, but he saves the innocent. Now the moments when he's there saving like the dog and the squirrel and all that, that's a classic old school Superman, saving cats out of trees and such like that. That I do like, because it shows like an innocence for the character of just classic goodness that is, I think, is most lacking in movies, especially superhero movies, because everybody's too wrapped up in either cringy Marvel humor or just outright nihilism, and that doesn't belong in every character. So I like their willingness to go in that direction with Superman. What else here? Third act. I didn't feel much of a. Didn't feel terribly moved by the character of Superman. Just the way he carried himself, he wasn't as strong as he typically would be. I don't know if it's based off newer runs of comics where he's a little bit younger and less sure of himself, at least less sure of himself so openly. I think what this version of Superman was lacking in was a little the stoicism that we would probably expect from him. He doesn't have to be like a rock hard statue and totally firm in his resolve every time. I mean, he can't. He's, like you said, he's human. Psychologically, he's not as strong as what we would expect to be the Man of Steel. But the fake interview that Lois holds with Superman felt a little too real and felt too much of a real debate with Lois and Clark. And after being 3 years of Superman, he probably should have a little bit more control of his emotions in that scene. So he kind of like blew up on her a little bit too much. He's like, he's Superman. He's got to be confident in his motives and stuff. And even if he breaks some cracks and slips up in the interview and stuff like that, and he sort of complains, Lois shouldn't just be arguing her point from her perspective as a reporter. But more so, the scene would have played out a little bit better if Lois affirmed her position and being like, yeah, I'm supposed to be tough on you because other reporters won't be so soft if you go public or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm going hard on you because the other reporters will not go soft. I'm not, this isn't me. Like, this is, I'm treating you like any other reporter would be. I know you did right, but other people are not going to see it like that, and you have to prepare yourself for that and keep your cool. A little aside like that would have helped that scene. Music, I don't know. I think I know what they were trying to do, and I know like they were trying to take it the same direction with the music as they did with the Michael Giacchino, Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, recycling the classic '60s Spider-Man theme in orchestral cinematic mode, but like much in the same way that I didn't like them recycling the John Williams music for Jurassic World from Jurassic Park. I didn't feel like it was earned, him using the Superman music, or at least the Superman music was too mute. It just wasn't well executed personally. Big problem with the cinematography. Hated the close-ups and the big long sweeping shots of the wide angle lenses on the action. It just looked too silly, especially the flying. They didn't frame it right. He didn't feel fast. He didn't feel as strong as he should be. the cameo with Kara at the end of the movie came out of left field, and this just did nothing for me. I did like the chemistry between him and the robots, the Superbots. That was cool, and I liked the Bradley Cooper Jor-El cameo with I think what was her name, Lara, and that message in original Kryptonian being translated. I thought that was pretty genuine, felt authentic. That element really annoyed me, was the fact that they decrypted and restored the corrupted second half of the message, and they totally abandoned that. And are they sticking with that he was actually sent to procreate and to lead a harem, or was that an actual bullshit? Was that like an abandoned plot line in the rewrites or reshoots and stuff? Because the way they dropped that plot line with Mr. Terrific saying, like, like those digital forensics guys are pretty good. They wouldn't do that. Like, they wouldn't lie about it being a legitimate, genuine footage. And in the back of my head, when I was in the theater watching, I was like, that's it? We're going to take their word for it? I mean, they're decrypting a video message in alien technology. How they could have easily doctored that and put that out in the world and dirty the pot. And they missed an opportunity making it to where he has to prove himself through his actions, and not just like prove his innocence and his genuine nature of being the hero for the world that he believes himself to be, to assuage the public in terms of them feeling like Superman is actually there to take over and rule Earth. And Mr. Terrific, like they missed an opportunity for Mr. Terrific to unveil the fact that was a doctored message from Lex. That was a plot thread that should have been used more instead of just abandoned through that throwaway line. I like how they're setting up using the Cincinnati City Hall for the Justice League and the classic Super Friends Hall of Justice, but it just didn't land too well for me. Honestly, the movie was just all over the place, and I just wasn't a terrible fan for it. Maybe it's an authentic take on some versions of Superman in the comics, but I just didn't. It didn't sit right for me. I mean, compared to like the Brandon Routh, Bryan Singer Superman Returns, Brandon Routh felt more like a Superman. He was scrawny, I guess, a little lanky, I suppose, but felt pretty more legit and as strong and as stoic and as serious and as humorless as the Man of Steel was. Henry Cavill is still, to me, is a slightly better Superman. Now, David Corenswet's look is great. He had a great look as Superman, and his Clark Kent looks different enough to where, I can believe that people don't know that he is Superman. So I do like that, their attempt to actually make him look different, much more different as Clark than he is as Superman. But also the moments with his aw shucks attitude, I guess, and his voice worked well for me, I suppose. But all in all, I think the movie just, I'm probably glossing over some other nitpicks because, again, I'm kind of winging this spoiler review, but I don't know, the movie didn't do it for me. Now, I will predict that this movie has more going for it than against it compared to Fantastic Four, so I do predict that if the word of mouth is positive enough from the general public, that this movie probably stands a better chance at making money compared to Fantastic Four, because I think Marvel is sort of as about on the rocks as DC is, but they're not hitting the reset button like DC is. So the DC has a little bit more going for it than that, for them than DC than Marvel. So my prediction is that Superman is going to make a little bit more money. Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner, cool, liked him. Not sure if this is the right movie to put him in, but he's well used. Metamorpho. Oh yeah, I didn't like the way the scene was filmed was shot, again with those the way the action sequences were shot. I didn't like that scene with him rescuing Metamorpho's son on that river, on that whatever interdimensional river he was stuck in against those raptors. It felt too too much humor in this. Not a whole lot of attention because it was too broken up with the silliness of that with crypto, it just didn't work for me. The movie, that sequence should have been a little bit more gripping. And the punctuated moment of crypto attacking Lex at the end was kind of funny, but again, they ruined a perfect moment of him properly defeating Lex and humbling him, at least to the point where he's mauling as he's getting arrested and stuff. They just, they just kind of broke the moment there, and it was he blew up a little bit too much on Lex there explaining his own humanity when really they could have, if he pulled back on that moment and spoke with a firm, not a robotic like stoic nature, but more so just a more calm confidence. That would have gotten the message across in that scene a little bit better. The chemistry between Lois and Clark was pretty good though. I did like that. I didn't mind that terribly too much. But the sequences with the planet, the Daily Planet staff, that could have cut out. That could have been cut out. That could have been worked around for them to they could have worked in a plot line of information warfare, I suppose. Of them being a legitimate press thing, if they want to get topical with this age of unreliable information, and them being the last honest media, if they really wanted to take it that direction. I think that might have worked. I just think this movie was all over the place and lacked a lot of focus. And I think it would have done better if it just had more focus between Superman and his struggles and Lex and his attempts to try to get Superman killed. I think in the beginning, trying to sway public opinion against him was probably well executed, but they could have, had they stuck more with that and gotten rid of that invasion plot line for the two countries, it would have worked a little better. All in all, I just I don't know. I didn't like Superman as much as I would have liked. Now, by no means is it a fucking terrible movie. I mean, if we're gonna compare it to the recent movies I've seen before, I mean, yeah, it's nowhere near as bad as, I guess, Jurassic World, but nowhere near as good as it should have been. But I didn't hate it. But in that same token, I'm not going to promote my takes on this as gospel, because I can understand that there's going to be enough stuff for other people to like in the movie for it to do well. So I can anticipate it getting a mixed response, but for the most part, it's going to be good enough that the general public is not going to mind it, and is going to like it enough. That's my opinion. That's my take. Those are my those are my opinions about Superman. If you have seen it, give me your thoughts. Let me know if you've if those same plot points and elements of the story kind of stuck out to you as it did for me. Yeah, that's been my spoiler review for Superman. I'm glad you stuck around for this, and if you want to see me more, hit that like, subscribe to the channel, and give me some feedback. Let me know how you're liking the channel so far, and I'll just keep improving it and see where this takes us. Anyways, take care. See you at the next movie.